Today is November 15th, 2019, Friday, and I am in Scottsdale, Arizona. Tomorrow I'm going to be running the Pass Mountain 50K just as a training run, but today I am doing a short stretch out run. I'm going to go really easily, and I thought I would go ahead and video log this since I'm planning to do a lot of walking. It's a little bit past sunrise, and I am at the Scottsdale Sonoran Preserve, specifically at the Browns Ranch trailhead. And that mountain over there, that is Browns Mountain. But I'm not going to go up and over that. I'm actually going to do a reasonably flat route today. And I think it's probably just around 4.5 miles, maybe a little bit more than that. And it heads off in that direction. So that's what I'm going to get started to do. So my birthday was last week, and Pass Mountain will be my first race as a 53-year-old. Sadly, my last race as a 52-year-old, while being my longest run of the year, longest run of 2019. I didn't finish it, so it was a DNF at the Javelina 100. I dropped at mile 76, and I don't have any real regrets about that. I was really sleepy. I'm not sure why, but I could not stay awake on the trail, and for the first time in my life ever, I actually laid down on the trail to take a nap. And that helped a bit. But of course, any runners that were passing, there are a lot of people in the Javelina 100. So every runner that passed would ask me if I was okay, which is correct. I mean, that's what I would have done in their place too. And I would just like lift a hand up. I'm just trying to take a cat nap. So I didn't really get any sleep. But it did rejuvenate me enough that I was able to make it to the next aid station without falling down, which is a good thing. But it wasn't enough of a nap for me to feel like I could make it all the way back to main camp. And at the aid station, the cots were all full, and they had some people with medical issues that were a lot worse off than I was. And it was too cold for me to just sleep in my running clothes outside of the medical tent. The place where I had laid down on the trail, I deliberately had picked a spot that was on top of the hill, so there's a bit of an inversion, so the tops of the hills were warmer than the drainages. But that particular aid station was very cold, so I ended up dropping there. It's certainly possible, if I could have managed to get myself back to main camp and had taken a longer nap there, that I could have finished. But at the time, I really did not feel like it was going to be a good idea for me to try to stagger down the trail for another, couple hours or hour and a half to make it to main camp. So I dropped. And the main reason I had been doing that run was to qualify for Western States. Last year was an odd year, and I did not have the opportunity to qualify earlier in the year. So Javelina is my last chance. But again, other than that, it wasn't a race that was particularly important to me. It wasn't a goal race. And so I think that's why it made it a little bit harder for me to, really want to try to, sleep on the cold ground at that aid station or do something else. And again, I don't really have any regrets. I took my one-time lottery buy so that I would not lose the tickets I already do have for Western States, which isn't many, but it's a few. And this year, I'm hopeful that I will get my Western States qualifier much earlier in the year. So this is actually a pretty view of Browns Mountain here. So I thought I'd pause for a second and get that. And it's just a really nice morning. I did a lot of training in this preserve last winter. We had a really cold, snowy winter up in Prescott last year. And so my husband and I spent a lot of time in Scottsdale. So this is kind of like home away from home for me. And during the winter, I really do love the desert. It's nice to be somewhere where it isn't quite so cold. But this year, the weather is still really good in Prescott. So we have not come down to Scottsdale yet. I'm gonna get a little running done. One thing I love about Brown's Ranch is how good the footing is. So you look at the trail and see a lot of the trails are just really great decomposed granite, which makes for a nice sandy trail. Feels good underfoot. You can look up and enjoy the scenery. And you know, this is a great morning to be out here. It isn't too windy. One of the problems sometimes here is that the wind can get pretty bad, but this morning it's really nice. Temperatures are perfect. Wasn't even too cold to start, and the mountain silhouettes look great. So just like being out here on a nice morning like this. So while Pass Mountain 50K is going to be my first race as a 53-year-old, I'm not planning to race it. It's going to be a training run. So my next several races, Pass Mountain 50K, McDowell Mountain Frenzy, where I'm going to do the 50 miler, which has a really steep climb, just one really steep climb. It's got a lot of other rolling short climbs up anyway, but the steep one goes up to Thompson Peak, and I did it a few years ago and I wasn't sure I'd ever do it again. It's on a road that's sometimes it's dirt, and sometimes in the steep section they actually have, I think it's concrete, to keep it from eroding away. It's a service road up to some communication towers and such at the top of the peak. And I decided this year I would do it because it's some good steep ascent training. So that 50 miler is a training run, and that's in December. And then in January I'm going to do another 50 mile, the Coldwater Rumble, the 50 miler distance, and again as a training run. What I'm trying to do is do a few runs that at my pace, particularly at training pace, will take me into the night and let me work on, you know, trying to manage my nutrition. I also had a bit of nausea at Javelina 100, and it was not the reason I dropped. The nausea wasn't that bad. I was still getting food down. But in addition to figuring out why I got so sleepy at that race, I also want to try to see if I can make my nutrition go better. So I'm going to use these 50 milers as practice to try to figure out what works. So those will not be any pace goals at all. Just chances to have some longer runs where I experiment with nutrition and also try to see, how I am feeling at that point. My next target race is going to be the Black Canyon 100K, and that's in February. My goal is to get my Western States qualifier for the next lottery at Black Canyon, nice and early in the season, so I don't have to worry about it. I feel like at my age and at my typical pace, even when I'm pushing, Western States would be quite a stretch. And so, given how long it takes to get in, and it's getting longer all the time as more people enter the lottery, I figure, I've got one shot at it. I need to keep this run up of tickets, and I don't have any more buys. So, and it's just, it's one of those things that I want to do it, and not really so much even for the course, but for the experience. It's the big dance here in the States, and I would like to have a chance to go to the big dance and have fun. And I think I will absolutely love the upper sections of that course. I love the high country in the Sierra Nevadas. It's beautiful up there. I've done some other runs in that area. So while the lower sections might not be the reason that I'm going, I would love to be able to run that course and feel all the excitement and see all that high country up near the beginning. I won't actually get to see a lot of the lower section of the course anyway, since for me that would be at night. But so that's why planning where I'm going to try to get my qualifier is one of my important goals each year. So sadly one that I missed this year, although this year was a little bit different. Had some medical issues in the family that pretty much kept me from doing much training in the spring, and it wasn't until we started to get past those that I had much more consistent mileage and consistent training. But that's part of it. I mean, it's not like everybody doesn't have to face those same things, but that's another reason why going forward, I'd like to try to really get that qualifier out of the way early in the season, because life happens, and family is a lot more important to me than, especially running any particular event. That's not nearly as important as family. I love being out here. I love spending time in the mountains, and in this case, in the desert. That's the real reason I run. But the events are interesting. They get me to places that I've never been at before, and I think that's a good thing. I love exploring new trails, and the great thing about events is that, somebody else has marked out what they think is some of the best trail in the area, and you get to go do a long outing there. There'll be places where you can resupply your water, so you don't have to, plan your own water drops or carry a filter. And you can even resupply your food. I have a lot of food allergies, so I generally carry a lot of my food. And for the first part of the race, I'll use my food almost exclusively. Whenever I'm getting towards the end of a race, my food allergies are not life-threatening, but they do cause me some problems, especially in conjunction with exercise. So I can be a little less careful towards the end of a race, because it usually won't catch up to me that quickly. But at the beginning, I stick with the stuff I know works. But water is a big thing. So I love going to events and having those places where you can, you know, hit an aid station and get things you might not be carrying. Now this year, this winter in particular, I have switched over from my normal Solomon running pack, which is a 5-liter. I'm now carrying a 12-liter. And part of that is actually so that I can carry more stuff just to have a bit more weight, especially on my slower outings where I'm trying to build strength. And the other part of it is so that I can carry a lot more gear and make sure, I mean, I carried a fair bit of gear in the 5-liter pack. I'd really wedge it in there, but you know, I was starting to damage some of the pack materials, stretching them out. And I would often make decisions about, okay, what gloves am I taking, or what mittens if it was cold. And with the bigger pack, I've actually carried all 3 of the different weights of mittens and gloves that I have. When I'm training in Prescott, we get some fairly large temperature swings. We can get a 40-degree temperature swing over the course of one run. And so I might start out with really warm mittens on my hands and then switch over to some insulated gloves that have some wind stopper material. And then I may go all the way down to some very thin gloves that are just basically just wind stop material, no insulation, and then down to bare hands. So my hands, especially when I want to use my camera a lot, that's one of the things I do, my hands can get pretty cold, and then it's hard getting them warm again if I don't have probably warmer hand wear than what a lot of people would wear. So, but that's what works for me. So that's what I do. So at any rate, larger pack now. And it's, since it's the same line as the other pack I wear, a lot of my things end up in the same places. There's a little bit of difference in the configuration on the back, but not too much. All right, this is my next trail junction. I am coming up on the Whiskey Bottle Trail, and I am going to take that to the left. I'm going to very briefly get on the Power Line Road and then pick up another trail to head back over to Brown's Ranch. Look at that scenery. Doesn't that just look beautiful? All right, gonna get some more running done without this in my hand. One of the reasons I'm going to try to do a little more videoing, and I actually hope to do some videoing tomorrow at Pass Mountain, is to make sure that on these training runs, I'm going at a super easy effort. I'm actually pretty good about that anyway, since the main reason I'm out here is to have fun and enjoy myself. But there is a little bit of a tendency to get into a habit of saying, oh, this is a flat trail, really smooth, very non-technical, you know, I should be running here. And while that's good for some runs, and you definitely want to alternate, I personally do better, and this is me, I personally do better with a lot of what some people would consider extremely slow mileage, but that just happens to be what works for me. I do get stronger with that, and I don't burn out. So I'm fairly susceptible to burning out if I if I do as much tempo runs and hill work at speed, as would be recommended in a training program, then I kind of lose my motivation to run. Again, I'm not out here to hit any particular speed goals. I'm out here because I love being out on the trails and being out, especially in the mountains when the season is right. So I don't want to ever lose that, even if it means I don't get as fast as I could if I were training more optimally in the scientific sense. That doesn't really mean anything to me if I'm not having fun. So the great thing about doing this video logging is that it forces me to slow down, and especially right now, I'm getting used to a new camera. I've got the Hero 8 Black, which was an early birthday present. I ordered it a little bit before my birthday, and then it actually came right around my birthday, so that worked well. But I noticed in my first days of filming with it, especially when I was trying to do a lot of the time warp filming of the trail, I ended up twisting my knee a little bit, and because I'm not used to running, even though this camera does stabilization on its own, I'm still trying to carry it somewhat stable. And when I was walking, that was fine, but when I was running, I think that caused a different motion on my knee, and so that didn't work as well for me. So the next time I went out, I just did recording when I was walking, because I definitely did not want to, strain my knee tendons. And today I'm doing a mix where I do some running with the camera, but I'm not running for the really longer stretches I was doing when I was doing the time warp the first time I had it out. I was trying to, run and get a long section of trail, and it takes a while, to get even 10 or 15 seconds of video in time warp. You have to actually be holding the camera for quite a while. So I'm doing less of that today until I think I probably have some stabilizer tendons I need to strengthen up in order to be able to do that, where I'm swinging one arm as I run, but I'm holding the other arm still. And I also need to be able to change from hand to hand. When I'm running, it's much harder for me to do that with my left hand. So it's just a question of practice and training. I find it really fun to have the video log afterwards. And some of my friends really like being able to see it. Some of my family like being able to see it. So I think it's worth trying to do. So we'll see how it goes today, because today's the first day I'm mixing it up. So, which, of course, might seem crazy given that I have an event tomorrow, but it just reinforces the fact that that event is a training run. It's a long training run, but it is not about pace. And so I think this will be a good experiment. I'll probably not do as much of the video logging on the first loop. So Pass Mountain is 2 25K loops. And just in case I am still straining or tweaking something, I think I'll do just a little bit during the first loop. And then the second loop, I end up hiking more anyway as the day gets warmer. Since I don't live in the valley, I am not as heat acclimatized as many people are. So when the day gets warmer, I'll be hiking more anyway. And then I can pull out the camera and do a bit more of the video work then. I'm on the Vaquero Trail now. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I'm taking this over to Browns Ranch Road. And Browns Ranch Road is what I'll finish my loop. That'll take me back to the trailhead I came in on. Behind me is Granite Mountain, and then the one next to it there is Cholla Mountain for the Cholla cactus. And then up ahead of me is Brown's Mountain. It's the flat-topped one, pretty identifiable. I'm hoping we'll have some of this wonderful haze, slight overcast cloudiness that we're having this morning. I'm hoping we'll have that tomorrow as well, because that would keep it from getting quite as hot at Pass Mountain. Just enjoying my nice hike out in the desert. So, as I was saying before, my next target event, Black Canyon 100K, and that's in February. And then after that, I'll have some events that I do every year. I don't think I'm going to put any time goals on them this year so that I can train through them. But March, I'll have Crown King Scramble, which was my very first ultra, and I have done it every year since then. So can't remember what number this year will be, but I like keeping that streak going. And then in April, we have the only trail ultra in my town in Prescott, Arizona, of the year, is the Whiskey Basin Ultra. And I'll do what is called the 88K, although with various trail changes that have occurred since things have started, it's become more like a 90 to a 92K, but who's counting? At any rate, it's a wonderful trail that's built that goes all the way around. The Prescott Circle Trail goes all the way around the city of Prescott. And those are some of my home training trails. A lot of my training is one side or the other of the Circle Trail, but it hits all the diverse areas that we have, which is really fascinating. Prescott has a lot of diversity in its little geological sense and in the flora sense. We have everything from rocky, outcropping masses of granite called the dells, with some lakes that are in between those. There's Watson Lake and Willow Lake, and those have wonderful riparian areas around them with different kinds of birds that live in those areas. And the areas by the lakes are, unsurprisingly, at least for the Circle Trail, they're fairly flat. And then you start to climb up into the mountains, and as you climb, you go through some grassland and scrub with some cactus. Prescott is high desert elevation, so the kinds of cactus we have there are a little bit different than the kinds that you see lower down here in the Sonoran Preserve. And then you have various kinds of scrub growth. And then my personal favorite, and where I do most of my training, is up in the Ponderosa pine forest. And you can get into really nice pines and some juniper, and we even have some nice pockets of aspen and a lot of scrub oak. So we do get some fall color, which I love. We're kind of past that now. Most of the oaks have dropped their leaves, and similarly for the aspens. But it's kind of fun to live in a reasonably warm climate, but still have distinctly 4 seasons. And like I was mentioning, last year we had a lot of snow, so the trails got a bit icy. Plus I was fighting a knee injury after I completed the Bear 100 in 2018. I got a knee injury that took a while to settle down, so I was doing more walking and hitting flatter trails as I was getting that under control. So that was one of the reasons I did a lot of my training here at Brown's Ranch, because there's a lot of, very gently rolling trails. Not a lot of ascent if you don't want to have it. There's a few places where you can get some ascent. And then if you go out on the Maricopa trail, which encircles the Phoenix area, you can certainly get into the mountains here and get some good climbs. But I mostly did flatter work while that knee was healing up. This year, we're having a lot less snow and cold so far, so it's still getting up into the low 70s in the middle of November. So the weather up there for running has been absolutely wonderful, and I'll probably stay up there for the most part until we get snow setting in on the trail. I actually don't really mind the cold. I have lots of good gear for dealing with cold weather, but when it gets icy, then I don't like that as much. This is a nice view here. So again, this is Granite Mountain there, and then Cholla Mountain is the smaller one on this side, and then swinging around we have Browns Mountain. It's really pretty. All right, so I'm on Browns Ranch Road now, headed back towards the trailhead. This trail is a little bit wider than the others and still really good footing. Morning. So sometimes I'll use this road just as an out and back if I'm trying to do a little bit of faster work. Nice views towards Browns Mountain there. And today, obviously, not trying to do anything fast. Just wanted to get some nice video. When you're coming back on Browns Ranch, you basically come over the shoulder of a crest here. So looking away from the trailhead, that's a really nice downhill section, and then it kind of curves around and goes out past. There's another low hill there. It goes around to the left of that and gets you into that section. There is a trail that goes all the way to the top of Browns Mountain. The first part is kind of a normal, it's obviously a lot steeper than this stuff, but it's not scrambly or anything. But then from the saddle, so once you cross past this cliff face here, you go up into that saddle area, and then the last bit up to the top is quite a bit steeper. I don't think bikes are recommended on that. It's still very doable, and it doesn't feel cliffy to me. I don't like really exposed routes, so I don't have any problems doing that one. But it is just a steeper climb to that. Now I'm gonna go finish up and get on back to the trailhead.